Groom laughed when she stepped off the train, until Lone Rancher gave Chinese Virgin his heart. Mei Lin had imagined this moment many times during the long journey across the ocean and the endless train ride that followed. She had pictured herself stepping down from the train with hope in her eyes, meeting the man who had promised her a new start. She had pictured a shy smile on his face, a gentle hello, and maybe a small sense of safety in a strange land. But when the train finally slowed and the wheels screeched against the tracks, her heart beat so fast she could almost hear it. This was the moment she had waited for, feared, and dreamed about, all at the same time. The station was nothing like the loud and crowded markets she knew from home. Instead, it was a quiet wooden platform standing alone beside an open stretch of land. The sky was huge above her, so wide it made her feel small. The sun shone brightly, but the wind was cool. Dust floated in the air with every step people took. Mei Lin held her small cloth suitcase close to her chest and tried to breathe slowly. She had been taught to stay calm and polite, no matter how nervous she felt. People around her stepped off the train and were greeted with hugs, laughter, or warm handshakes. A woman rushed into her husband's arms. A child ran to his father. A group of cowboys slapped each other's shoulders in celebration. Life felt busy and alive around Mei Lin, and she hoped she, too, would soon be part of a moment like that. She searched for the face she had seen only in drawings and imagined 100 times. Charles Riggs. He had written letters, short, plain letters with simple promises. He had said he needed a wife to help on his property, someone steady and respectful. The words were not romantic, but they were hopeful. Mei Lin believed that hope was enough to begin a decent life. She stepped down from the last train step, smoothing the wrinkles in her dress. It was not fancy, but she had washed it carefully before arriving. She wore her hair in a simple braid, tied with a blue ribbon she saved for important moments. Her shoes were dusty from travel, but she stood with as much grace as she could. She looked around again, holding her breath. Then she saw him. Charles stood several yards away, leaning against a pillar with 2 other men. He had a tall frame and a wide hat, but the first thing she noticed was not his shape or clothes. It was the sudden grin that spread across his face the instant he saw her. She thought for a moment that he was pleased, but within a second the grin twisted. It wasn't warm. It wasn't shy, it wasn't kind. It was a laugh, a loud, careless laugh. The 2 men beside him turned to see what he was laughing at. When their eyes landed on Mei Lin, their faces lit up in the same unkind way. One nudged Charles with his elbow. The other whispered something that made Charles bend forward slightly, laughing even harder. Mei Lin stopped walking. Her feet felt glued to the wood beneath her. She didn't know what they found funny, her small size, her long journey clothes, her unsure steps, or simply her being foreign. She didn't want to assume the worst, but their expressions left little room for misunderstanding. Charles lifted a hand, but not to greet her. He simply waved his friends closer as if calling them to enjoy some unexpected amusement. Mei Lin's heart dropped a little. She had read that life in America could be difficult. She had prepared herself for long work days, new customs, and the loneliness of being far from home. But she had not prepared for laughter, not this kind. Still, she stood straight and took a small step forward. She reminded herself that first meetings can feel awkward. Maybe he was simply surprised. Maybe he didn't know what to say. She held onto that tiny hope like a rope, afraid to fall without it. She reached a few steps away from him and gently lowered her suitcase to the ground. She gave a polite bow, small, soft, respectful. She waited for a hello. Charles wiped a tear from his eye, not from emotion, but from laughing too hard. His friends snickered behind him. Mei Lin felt her face grow warm, but she did not show anger or embarrassment. She kept her hands folded neatly in front of her and waited. You're Mei Lin?" Charles finally managed to say, still half laughing. "Yes," she answered softly. "I am." Charles looked her up and down in a way that made her feel like she was being judged in a market rather than greeted as a future wife. His head tilted slightly, and another laugh escaped him, though he tried to hide it this time. "Well, ain't that something?" he muttered under his breath, loud enough for his friends to hear, but soft enough that Mei Lin wondered if she was meant to hear it. His friends chuckled again. Mei Lin clasped her fingers together, feeling them tremble. She reminded herself she had traveled thousands of miles with courage. She reminded herself she was here to build a new future. She reminded herself she was strong enough to withstand this moment. The hope she had carried for weeks began to dim, but it did not disappear completely. She tried again. "I am happy to meet you," she said carefully. Charles didn't answer. Instead, he turned to his friends as if silently asking for their opinion. One shrugged. The other raised an eyebrow in a mocking way. Charles sighed, still amused. "This ain't what I expected," he said carelessly. Mei Lin swallowed. She didn't ask what he expected. She didn't ask what disappointed him. She didn't ask why he had laughed the moment he saw her. She simply waited, hoping he would give her a chance to speak more fully. But he didn't. He walked past her to look at the luggage cart as if checking for something more interesting. "So this is it?" he asked, pointing at her small suitcase, though not really asking her. "Yes," she replied. "It is all I have." He chuckled again. "Well, you sure traveled light." Mei Lin tried to reply, but her voice felt trapped somewhere in her chest. She wasn't ashamed of having little. She believed a new life didn't need to begin with many things, but the way he said it made her belongings feel even smaller than before. A few people on the platform noticed the scene. Some glanced curiously, not understanding the details but sensing something uncomfortable. Others continued about their business. Mei Lin wished she could fade into the crowd just for a moment, but she stood alone. She finally asked, "Shall we go?" Charles hesitated. His friend whispered something in his ear, and he let out another short laugh. "Actually," he said, scratching his chin, "I'm not sure about this anymore." Mei Lin felt her breath catch. She didn't understand. "Not sure," she repeated quietly. Charles shrugged almost casually. "I mean, I didn't expect you to look like this or be like this." He waved a hand vaguely, as if referring to everything about her. Maybe this was a bad idea. Her heart tightened, not painfully, but sadly, like a balloon losing air. "I came because you invited me," she said softly, "because of your letters." "Yeah, well," Charles replied, "letters don't show everything." His friends nodded as if this was the most reasonable thing in the world. Mei Lin's hands tightened around her suitcase handle. Her voice stayed gentle. "I came hoping for a chance, nothing more." Charles shrugged again. "I don't know if I want to go through with it." The sentence floated in the air between them, quiet but heavy. For a moment, Mei Lin forgot how to breathe. She blinked slowly, trying not to let her disappointment show. She was not angry. Anger required a kind of energy she didn't have left after days of travel. She simply felt tired and unsure of what to do next. She looked down at her suitcase. It suddenly looked even smaller, even more fragile. She didn't have any family here. She didn't know anyone in this new land. She had trusted the promise of a man she had never met in person. And now that man stood before her, amused rather than welcoming. Her mind tried to stay calm. She reminded herself she always found solutions, even in difficult situations. She reminded herself she had survived the long ship journey, the crowded ports, the endless days on the train. She reminded herself she still had her dignity, even if others failed to see it. She lifted her head slowly, trying to speak again, when something shifted in the corner of her vision. Far to the side of the platform, away from the laughter and careless comments, stood a man she did not know. A tall man, quiet and still, holding the reins of a wagon. He wasn't smiling, nor was he frowning. He simply watched, carefully, thoughtfully, as if trying to understand what was happening. Mei Lin didn't know who he was. She didn't know his name. But for the first time since stepping off the train, she felt someone was not laughing at her. Someone was simply seeing her. She didn't know that this moment, this quiet, small moment, would change everything. But it would. Her journey had not gone how she expected. Her dream had not arrived in the package she imagined. But sometimes life quietly places new paths where old ones fall apart. And as she stood there on the wooden platform, alone but still standing, a new path was already waiting. Just a few yards away, held by the calm eyes of a stranger she had never met. Samuel Hayes had always been a man of few words. People in town often described him as quiet, steady, and a little mysterious. He wasn't unfriendly, just someone who preferred the open land to crowded places. He rarely lingered around the train station except when he truly needed supplies. But on this particular afternoon, he arrived early, with no special reason except that something had nudged him out of his usual routine. He couldn't explain it, but he followed the feeling anyway. He tied his horse near the post and waited beside his wagon, watching the train slow to a stop. He had expected to see the usual passengers getting off with bags and boxes. He had expected the usual noise, the conductor calling instructions, families greeting one another, travelers stretching their legs. Those scenes were familiar. But what caught his attention was not the usual chaos. It was the stillness around one young woman who stepped off the train with careful movements and gentle eyes. She carried a small suitcase and looked around as though searching for someone she had imagined many times. Samuel felt a tug in his chest, not out of attraction, but out of curiosity, an instinct telling him that something important was happening in front of him. She looked tired but determined, and her presence seemed out of place among the loud voices and energetic greetings of the other passengers. Then he saw Charles Riggs. Samuel knew Charles. Not friends, but familiar enough to understand the type of man he was. Easygoing, sometimes careless, often more interested in impressing his friends than in treating people kindly. Samuel had seen him laugh at others before, usually without thinking twice about the effect his laughter had. But Samuel didn't expect Charles to act this way today. He watched the moment Charles' eyes met the young woman's. Instead of smiling or stepping forward with a polite greeting, Charles burst out laughing as if he had just heard the funniest joke of his life. His friends echoed the laughter immediately. Samuel frowned, not deeply, just a small movement across his face that only people who knew him well could recognize. He wasn't a man who liked unnecessary cruelty, even the kind that came disguised as humor. He believed that dignity was something every person deserved, no matter their appearance, background, or situation. The woman's shoulders stiffened slightly, but she stood tall. She placed her suitcase gently on the ground and bowed her head with a polite greeting. Samuel could almost feel her trying to stay hopeful. He noticed how she folded her hands neatly, how she waited patiently for Charles to treat her with a basic level of respect. But respect never came. Instead, he heard Charles' careless comments and the soft, unkind snickering of the men beside him. Samuel's jaw tightened, not in anger but in quiet disapproval. He didn't like seeing anyone treated that way, especially not someone who seemed as gentle and alone as she did. He stayed where he was, watching closely but silently because that was his nature. He didn't interfere unless he needed to. As the conversation unfolded, he could tell the woman, Mei Lin, he later learned, was trying very hard to stay composed. He admired that. Many people might have argued or walked away, but she stood still with humility and calmness. She answered Charles softly, with honesty and patience. She tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, even when he clearly didn't deserve it. Samuel's eyes followed every small detail. The way her fingers trembled slightly, the way she blinked slowly as if fighting back hurt feelings, the way she kept her voice steady even when Charles' words grew more dismissive. Finally, Charles made his careless announcement. He wasn't sure he wanted to go through with it. Samuel felt something shift in him, something like a quiet disappointment in Charles and a growing concern for the woman standing alone with no clear place to go. He didn't move yet, but he leaned forward slightly, as though preparing himself to step in if the situation became worse. Then Charles walked away from her, leaving her standing there with her small suitcase and her fading hope. Mei Lin lowered her eyes, not dramatically, just with the soft sadness of someone who had tried her best and wasn't sure what to do next. Her posture was dignified, but even from a distance, Samuel could see a loneliness settle around her like a shadow. For a long moment, the platform around her kept moving, people hugging, children laughing, luggage being rolled away. But she stayed perfectly still, as if she had suddenly become invisible to everyone except Samuel. He stepped forward. He didn't rush. He didn't want to startle her or make her feel watched. Instead, he walked toward her with slow, steady steps, the way one approaches a frightened but hopeful creature, careful, gentle, and without pressure. When he finally reached her, he removed his hat slightly in greeting. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "are you in need of some help?" The words were simple, but they came from a place of genuine concern. Mei Lin looked up in surprise. Her eyes were soft but tired, as though she had been holding her breath for too long. I do not want to be trouble," she said gently. Samuel shook his head. "You're not trouble." She hesitated, unsure if she could trust a stranger. He didn't blame her. In a new land, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, trust was not something easily given, so he didn't push. He simply waited, his posture open, his expression steady. After a long moment, she spoke again. "I'm not sure where to go now." "I can help you with that," Samuel replied calmly. "My ranch isn't far from here. It's quiet and safe. You can rest there just until you decide what you want to do next." She looked uncertain. I do not wish to accept something that feels too generous." Samuel gave a small, reassuring smile. "It's not too generous, it's just the right thing to do." Mei Lin blinked slowly, studying him. She wasn't looking for perfection or grandeur, just sincerity. And Samuel had that by nature. His calm eyes and simple manner showed no sign of judgment, no hidden amusement, no loud laughter waiting to escape, just steady kindness. "Thank you," she said softly, finally giving a small nod. Samuel lifted her suitcase, noticing how light it was, how little she truly had. He handled it with care as though it contained fragile memories. He guided her toward his wagon with patient steps, making sure she didn't feel hurried or pressured. As they walked, the wind brushed lightly across the platform. Mei Lin glanced back once, seeing Charles and his friends still talking, unaware of her departure. She did not wish them harm, she simply felt the last bit of hope tied to them fade away like dust blowing into the air. Samuel noticed her look back. "You don't need to worry about them anymore," he said in a gentle tone, not forceful, just comforting. Mei Lin turned her gaze forward again. She climbed into the wagon with careful movements, sitting quietly and folding her hands in her lap. Samuel placed her suitcase beside her and climbed into the driver's seat. Before he flicked the reins, he glanced at her. "If you need anything, even if it's just a moment to breathe, you let me know," she nodded. "I appreciate your kindness." The horse began to move, and the wagon rolled slowly away from the station. The sounds of the platform faded behind them, replaced by the rhythmic clopping of hooves and the soft rustling of dry grass on either side of the path. Mei Lin looked around at the open land. Everything felt wide, quiet, and new. It didn't erase the hurt she felt, but it gave her something she didn't expect. A small sense of calm, a feeling that maybe this new place wasn't entirely unwelcoming. Samuel didn't speak much during the ride. He believed silence could be comforting when shared with understanding. He didn't pry into her past, nor did he ask about the letters or the promises Charles had made. Instead, he let the peaceful scenery do the talking. After a while, Mei Lin surprised herself by speaking. "I thought I would be starting a life with someone today," she said softly. Samuel kept his eyes on the road but listened carefully. "Sometimes life changes its plans," he replied. "Sometimes those changes turn out better than the old plans." She looked at him for a quiet moment, wondering if he spoke from experience. He didn't say more, but his calm voice held the weight of someone who had known his own share of changes. His quiet confidence made her feel slightly less alone. As the wagon moved farther from town, Samuel gently explained, "My ranch isn't fancy. It's just a simple place with a good roof, clean water, and quiet evenings. You can stay in the guest room. It's small, but it's yours to use." Mei Lin felt something warm inside her. It wasn't comfort yet, comfort takes time, but it was the beginning of feeling safe again. "You do not even know me," she said softly. "You don't need to be known to be treated kindly," Samuel answered. The words settled deeply into her heart. The rest of the ride passed quietly. The land opened wider, the sky stretched even further, and slowly Mei Lin felt her breath become calmer. Not completely steady, but no longer trembling. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun was gently dipping down, painting the sky in soft colors. Samuel helped her down from the wagon, carried her small suitcase inside, and showed her the guest room, a simple space with a clean bed, a small table, and a window overlooking a calm field. "This is for you," he said. "Stay as long as you need." Mei Lin touched the blanket with her fingertips, feeling its neatness, its warmth. She turned to Samuel and bowed her head slightly in gratitude. "Thank you, truly," Samuel nodded, tipping his hat politely. "You're welcome. Rest now. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." As he walked out and closed the door gently behind him, Mei Lin sat quietly on the bed. She took a deep breath, letting the peaceful silence of the room wrap around her. The day had begun with laughter meant to hurt her, but it ended with kindness she never expected. And somewhere deep inside her heart, a small, fragile spark of hope began to glow again, softly but steadily. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the small window of the guest room and stretched across the floor like a soft blanket. Mei Lin opened her eyes slowly, unsure for a moment of where she was. Then she remembered the long journey, the train station, Charles, laughter, and the unexpected kindness of the quiet rancher who had offered her a safe place to rest. She sat up feeling a mixture of peace and uncertainty. Peace because the room felt safe, uncertainty because she did not know what the day would bring. She stood and walked to the window. The world outside was calm and wide. Fields stretched like a golden carpet under the morning sky. Birds flew in gentle circles, singing soft notes that drifted through the open air. It was nothing like home. It was something entirely new. Mei Lin smoothed her braid and folded her blanket neatly before stepping out of the room. The wooden floor creaked softly under her feet. She hesitated in the hallway, listening for any sound that might tell her if Samuel was awake. She didn't want to disturb him, but she also didn't want to appear rude by hiding in her room. She finally followed the faint smell of warm bread to the kitchen. Samuel stood at the stove, wearing a simple shirt and preparing breakfast with slow, steady movements. He turned when he heard her steps and gave a small nod of greeting. "Morning," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. "Good morning," she replied, her voice gentle but clearer than the day before. "I hope you slept well." "I did." "Thank you," she paused, unsure what else to say. "Your home is very peaceful." "I'm glad you feel that," Samuel answered. "Peace is the one thing I try to keep around here." There was a brief silence, not uncomfortable but thoughtful. Mei Lin stepped closer and looked at the table where he had placed warm bread, honey, and fresh water. It touched her heart that he had prepared more than just food. He had prepared welcome. "I can help with something," she said quietly. "It is better if I do not sit without work." "You don't owe me anything," Samuel replied, shaking his head gently. "You're my guest, you should rest." "But resting too much makes me feel uneasy," she admitted honestly. "I am used to working, it helps me feel useful." Samuel studied her face for a moment. He didn't see someone weak or lost. He saw a woman trying to regain her balance, trying to anchor herself in a world that had shifted beneath her feet. He understood that feeling more than he said. "All right," he said finally. "If you want to help, you can set the table," she smiled softly. "I can do that." She moved with quiet grace as she placed plates, cups, and utensils neatly on the wooden table. Her movements were careful and respectful, as though she believed even small tasks deserved attention. Samuel watched her out of the corner of his eye, admiring her politeness without saying a word about it. When they sat down to eat, she waited for him to begin, showing the manners she had been taught since childhood. Samuel broke a piece of bread and nodded for her to join him. "Thank you for the meal," she said before taking her first bite. They ate mostly in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. It was the kind of quiet where two people didn't need constant words to feel at ease. The soft clinking of utensils, the gentle breeze from the window, and the warmth from the stove filled the room with a strange sense of belonging, something Mei Lin had not felt since leaving home. After breakfast, Samuel stood and prepared to head outside. He picked up his worn hat, dusted it off, and placed it on his head. Mei Lin watched him curiously. "I need to feed the animals," he said. "You can rest if you want." "I would like to come," she said quickly, then paused. "If it is all right," Samuel thought about it. He didn't usually have company during his morning chores. His ranch life had always been simple and quiet. But a small part of him felt that showing her the ranch might help her feel more grounded, more connected to the place she was staying. "It's all right," he said with a nod. "But you don't have to do anything, just walk with me." Mei Lin followed him outside, stepping into the cool morning air. The ranch felt bigger than she expected. Fences stretched far into the distance. A barn stood tall, its red paint faded by the sun. Several horses grazed lazily, lifting their heads briefly when Samuel walked by. She felt something light touch her heart, something like wonder. Samuel offered simple explanations as they walked, pointing out the barn, the stable, the water pump, and the fields where he grew small crops. His voice remained calm and steady, making everything feel approachable rather than overwhelming. When they reached the barn, a small cat appeared from behind a barrel and rubbed its head against Samuel's leg. "That's Willow," Samuel said. "She keeps mice away." Mei Lin crouched down and held out her hand gently. The cat sniffed her fingers, then allowed her to touch its fur. A soft smile appeared on Mei Lin's face, one Samuel hadn't seen before. It was small but warm, carrying a piece of her past joy. "She is very friendly," Mei Lin said. "Only to people she trusts," Samuel answered. Mei Lin blinked, not sure how to respond to that. She simply kept petting the cat quietly. As Samuel fed the horses and checked the hay, Mei Lin walked around the barn, touching the wooden beams and running her fingers along the smooth handles of old tools. Everything felt humble but full of life. This place wasn't rich in luxury, but it was rich in peace. She found herself breathing easier. When Samuel finished tending to the animals, they walked back toward the house. Mei Lin's steps felt lighter than when she had first arrived. She still carried uncertainty, but now she also carried a sense of direction, however faint it might be. Inside the house, she offered again, "Please let me help." I don't feel right staying here without doing something. Samuel hesitated, but her sincerity made him nod. If you're sure, maybe you can help with small things inside the house, only if you want to. I want to, she said gently. He showed her where the clean cloths were, where the flour was kept, where the pots hung. Mei Lin listened carefully, memorizing everything. In her heart, she had always believed that helping others was a way to show respect, and Samuel had treated her with nothing but respect since the moment she stepped into his wagon. She began by wiping the table, then sweeping the floor. She did each task with delicate attention. She wasn't trying to impress Samuel. She was simply doing what she knew, allowing her hands to work so her heart could settle. Samuel watched from a distance, noticing how carefully she moved. She didn't rush or complain. She simply worked with quiet gratitude. After a while, she prepared tea, her hands moving with familiar comfort. She placed 2 cups on the table and poured the hot water gently. "Please," she said, offering a cup. Samuel sat down and accepted it. "You're very thoughtful," he said. "I am grateful for your kindness," she replied. They drank tea together, and the air between them felt warmer, more comfortable. It wasn't friendship yet, not fully, but it was something that could grow into friendship with time. Later that afternoon, Mei Lin stepped outside alone for a moment. She stood at the fence, looking out at the fields that shimmered softly under the sunlight. The open land reminded her of the freedom she never expected to feel after such a painful arrival. She remembered how Charles laughed, how her heart sank, and how alone she felt at the station. But now, standing on this peaceful ranch, she felt something else rise inside her, something gentle and new. She wasn't healed. Hurt doesn't disappear overnight. But she had a place to rest, a place to breathe, a place where her presence wasn't a burden. As she stood there, she heard Samuel's footsteps approach quietly behind her. "Everything all right?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said, turning toward him. "More than all right." "I feel calm." Samuel liked hearing that. It showed him she wasn't simply existing, she was slowly rebuilding. "If you ever need to talk," he said, "I'm around. I may not be good with many words, but I can listen." Mei Lin smiled again, a little fuller than before. Sometimes listening is more important than words. The sun lowered behind them, casting long shadows that stretched across the field like gentle arms reaching out. They stood quietly, watching the golden light fade toward evening. It wasn't dramatic or exciting. It was simple and steady, just like the man who had offered her safety. For the first time since arriving in this strange new land, Mei Lin felt that maybe she wasn't completely alone anymore. Maybe she could find belonging in unexpected places. Maybe new beginnings didn't have to start with promises. They could start with kindness. And as the evening settled around them, 2 people who had lived separate lives for so long shared a peaceful moment that neither would forget. Though neither said the words aloud, both felt it quietly. This was the beginning of something new. Days on the ranch settled into a gentle rhythm, almost like the slow rise and fall of quiet waves. Mei Lin woke up each morning with the smell of fresh air drifting through the window. And each evening she watched the sky blush with pink and gold as the sun sank beyond the wide fields. Life was simple here, quiet enough for her thoughts to breathe, but warm enough to feel like she was not floating alone anymore. She grew used to the sound of Samuel's footsteps early in the morning. Sometimes she heard him outside before sunrise, feeding the animals or fixing something near the barn. Other times he moved around the kitchen softly, boiling water for tea or gathering things he needed for the day. His movements were slow, calm, never rushed. She admired that about him, how he did everything with steady purpose. Samuel, in return, grew used to seeing her step into the kitchen with her gentle smile and neatly braided hair. She always greeted him respectfully, her voice soft but growing more confident each day. He found himself looking forward to that morning, greeting more than he expected. The house, once filled only with silence, now held the faint sounds of her careful work. The soft sweep of a broom, the quiet clink of cups, the gentle hum of a tune she sometimes whispered without realizing it. It surprised Samuel how easily she blended into the place, as though she had been meant to be part of the ranch long before she arrived. One day after breakfast, Samuel asked, "Would you like to learn how to ride a horse?" Mei Lin froze for a moment, unsure. She had seen the horses many times, admired their grace and strength from a distance, but getting close enough to ride one felt almost impossible. "I have never been on a horse," she said honestly. "I might fall." Samuel gave a small smile. Most people fall at least once while learning, but I won't let you fall today. I'll guide you." She looked at him, studying his steady expression. She trusted him more than she had trusted anyone in a long time, so she nodded. "I would like to try." He led her to the pasture where a calm chestnut horse grazed near the fence. "This is Maple," he said. "She's gentle, she listens well, a good horse for learning." Mei Lin approached slowly, her steps careful and respectful. The horse lifted its head, ears flicking curiously. Mei Lin extended her hand. Maple sniffed her fingers, then nudged her palm softly. "She likes you," Samuel said. "Or maybe she is being polite," Mei Lin said with a quiet laugh. Samuel chuckled. It was a warm sound, gentle and rare. Mei Lin felt her heart lift a little just hearing it. Samuel taught her how to stand beside the horse, how to stroke her neck, how to speak softly so Maple could feel calm. Then he showed her where to place her foot on the stirrup and how to swing her leg over the saddle. He stood beside her as she lifted herself up, his hand ready near her arm in case she slipped. She gripped the horn of the saddle tightly as she sat down, her eyes wide with both fear and excitement. "You're doing great," Samuel said. "Hold the reins lightly, not too tight." "Maple will feel it." Mei Lin took a slow breath. "I feel like I am very high off the ground." "You are," Samuel answered, "but that's part of the fun." He guided Maple forward slowly, walking beside the horse so Mei Lin wouldn't feel alone. She moved stiffly at first, her shoulders tight and her hands trembling. But as Samuel talked her through each step, she began to relax. After a few minutes, she smiled, an open, bright smile that made her look different, lighter. "This is wonderful," she said softly. Samuel watched her with a calm but warm expression. Seeing her feel joy again made something gentle rise in his chest, something he didn't quite know how to name. They walked around the pasture for a long time. Sometimes Mei Lin asked questions about horses or about the ranch. Sometimes she simply enjoyed the rhythm of Maple's steps. And sometimes they didn't speak at all, letting the quiet moments say what words couldn't. Over the following days, riding became something she looked forward to. Each time she improved a little more. Each time Samuel walked beside her, offering simple advice and encouragement. Each time they shared a quiet laugh or a moment of understanding. As the days passed, their bond grew in small, meaningful ways. One afternoon, Mei Lin helped Samuel mend a broken fence near the back field. She held the pieces steady while he hammered them into place. Their hands brushed once, not on purpose, just by accident, but the moment felt warm and gentle. They both paused for a heartbeat before continuing their work like nothing happened, though both felt something change inside them. Another day, Mei Lin cooked a dish she remembered from home. The flavors carried memories of her childhood, the markets, the festivals, the soft laughter of her family. Samuel tasted it carefully and smiled. "This is the best meal I've had in a long time," he said. She lowered her eyes shyly. "I am glad you like it." "It tastes like it's made with heart," he added. She looked up then, touched by his words. No one had complimented her cooking in such a sincere way in years. Her heart warmed. In return, Samuel taught her simple English words she didn't know yet. They sat at the table in the evenings, a lantern glowing softly between them. He would say a word, she would repeat it carefully, and sometimes they would both laugh when her pronunciation twisted into something unexpected. Then she began teaching him simple Mandarin words. He repeated them slowly, sometimes with great accuracy, sometimes with surprising mistakes that made her giggle softly. She enjoyed teaching him. He enjoyed learning from her. Their worlds were different, but they found ways to share them. One word, one meal, one quiet moment at a time. Sometimes in the evenings, they sat outside on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of purple and blue. Samuel rested his arms on the railing, and Mei Lin sat in the wooden chair beside him. They did not need constant conversation. The peaceful silence between them felt safe. One evening, Samuel said quietly, "When you first came here, I didn't know how long you would stay. But now it feels natural having you here." Mei Lin turned to him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. Her heart fluttered softly. "I feel the same," she admitted. "At first, I thought I was only resting here until I found another path. But each day, I feel less like a guest and more like I belong." Samuel looked at her then, really looked at her. The golden light of the setting sun touched her face gently. She looked peaceful but also strong, as though she had grown roots in this quiet land without even noticing. "You do belong," he said softly. The words lingered in the air between them, gentle but powerful. Mei Lin felt warmth spread through her heart. She had never expected a stranger in a distant land to make her feel seen, safe, and valued. But Samuel did without trying. Their connection deepened with every passing day. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It grew slowly, like a seed finding water and sunlight until it became something steady and undeniable. They began to share small details about their pasts, nothing too heavy, but enough to understand each other better. Mei Lin told him about her family, her childhood memories, and the hopes she carried across the ocean. Samuel told her about his parents, how he grew up on the ranch, and how the quiet of the plains had always been his comfort after they passed. One day Mei Lin asked, "Do you ever feel lonely living here?" Samuel paused before answering. "Sometimes," he said, "but it's a quiet kind of loneliness. It doesn't hurt, it just exists." "And now?" she asked softly. Samuel glanced at her with gentle eyes. "Now the house feels less empty." Mei Lin felt her breath catch in her throat, not in fear but from the soft beauty of his words. As the days blended softly into weeks, it became clear that their hearts were moving toward each other, carefully, respectfully, with no rush. It wasn't a rescue. It wasn't an obligation. It wasn't something forced. It was a slow-growing warmth born from kindness, understanding, and shared moments. It was two people learning that companionship could be gentle and steady, not loud or complicated. It was the quiet birth of something that neither of them had expected, and both of them quietly cherished. And although neither said the word love aloud, they both felt something tender blooming between them, something too soft to name yet, but too real to ignore. The soft days of quiet understanding and shared moments continued, and the ranch slowly grew into a place of comfort for Mei Lin. She no longer woke with uncertainty in her chest. Instead, she woke with a gentle sense of purpose, knowing her day would be filled with small tasks, warm sunlight, peaceful evenings, and the steady presence of Samuel. She found herself humming while she worked, something she had not done in a long time. Samuel, too, felt a change inside himself. His once lonely evenings were now filled with the sound of soft conversation, light laughter, and the peaceful feeling that someone else was sharing the same roof and the same sky with him. He had lived alone for so long that he had forgotten how comforting it could be to have another person nearby. Mei Lin's presence brought a new warmth to the ranch, a kind that made him look forward to each day with quiet happiness. But even peaceful days cannot protect someone from the unexpected. One afternoon, while Mei Lin was preparing tea, she heard the sound of wagon wheels rolling loudly toward the house. She paused, the teacup still in her hands. It was not Samuel's wagon. She knew the rhythm of his horses by now. This sound was rougher, heavier, as though it carried a weight of impatience. She stepped outside carefully and saw a sight that made her heart tighten. Charles. He was sitting in a wagon at the gate, his posture stiff, his expression unreadable. He looked different than the last time she had seen him, less amused, more serious, but not in a comforting way. For a moment, Mei Lin felt the same sinking feeling she had experienced at the station, the same sense of being small and unwanted. Samuel came from the barn when he heard the noise. He walked toward the gate with steady steps, his expression calm but watchful. Mei Lin stayed behind him slightly, not hiding, but staying close to the person she trusted. Charles climbed down, brushing dust from his clothes. He avoided meeting Mei Lin's eyes at first, then finally looked at her with a strange mixture of discomfort and forced confidence. "So," he said, clearing his throat, "I came back for her." The words were simple, but they carried a deep heaviness. Mei Lin's breath caught. She didn't answer right away. Her hands tightened together gently. Samuel didn't speak for her. He didn't step forward to shield her or pull her away. He simply stood beside her, allowing her the space to choose for herself. He believed in giving her freedom, not making decisions for her. Charles continued talking because the silence made him uneasy. "I was told people saw her with you," he said to Samuel. "So I figured she ended up here after the mix-up at the station." He shifted awkwardly. "Look, I've been thinking, maybe I was too quick to judge. Maybe I should give this a real try." Mei Lin felt a soft stirring of sadness, not because she missed him, but because the words felt empty. They did not come from care. They came from someone who changed his mind only after seeing that she was not helpless or abandoned. Charles finally turned to her directly. "So if you want to come with me now, I'll take you." Mei Lin met his gaze with calm eyes. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel resentment. She simply felt clarity, gentle, steady clarity. "I am not something to be taken," she said softly. Charles blinked, surprised by her firmness. I meant, well, you know what I meant. Yes, she replied, her voice still gentle. I do know. She took a small breath, then shook her head. But I refuse. Charles' eyebrows lowered in confusion. Refuse? Why? I'm giving you another chance. Mei Lin felt Samuel shift slightly beside her, not in anger, but in quiet support. She didn't look at him, but she felt his presence like a steady hand on her back. You did not want me when I arrived, she said calmly. You laughed when you saw me. You turned away from me, and you made it clear that I was not worth your time. Charles looked uncomfortable. All right, maybe I handled things badly, but I came all the way here. Doesn't that count? It counts, Mei Lin said, but not enough. A person should not be chosen only when they have nowhere else to go. Samuel stayed silent, letting her speak her truth. Mei Lin continued, her voice steady but full of quiet strength. When I stepped off that train, I was alone. You did not worry about what might happen to me. You did not care if I had food or shelter, but Samuel cared. He saw me. He helped me because it was right, not because he wanted something. Charles frowned. So you're staying here forever? Mei Lin looked at Samuel briefly. His calm expression softened at her glance. She turned back to Charles. I stay because I want to, she said gently. Not out of need, not out of fear, not out of obligation. Charles opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it again. He didn't know what else to say. He looked between Samuel and Mei Lin and finally realized he was not welcome, not because of anger, but because this place held a kind of peace he could not enter. He nodded stiffly. Fine, he muttered. Do what you want. Then he climbed back into his wagon and rode away, leaving only dust behind him. Mei Lin watched the wagon disappear down the road, but her heart felt surprisingly light. Not triumphant, not relieved, just clear. A chapter had closed gently without bitterness. Samuel waited until the wagon was out of sight before he turned to her. You handled that with a lot of grace, he said softly. She smiled faintly. It was not difficult. I already knew my answer. Samuel nodded, his expression warm. I'm glad you chose what felt right to you. Mei Lin met his eyes. I did. They walked back toward the house together, steps slow and peaceful. The air felt lighter around them, as though something heavy had finally settled and drifted away. Inside the house, Mei Lin poured tea into 2 cups. Her hands were steady, her heart calm. When she handed Samuel his cup, their fingers touched lightly, this time not by accident. He didn't move his hand away. She didn't either. For a long moment they simply stood there, eyes soft with understanding. Neither spoke, but the silence held more meaning than words could express. That evening they sat on the porch as they often did. The sky stretched wide above them, painted with soft evening colors. The air was gentle, the breeze mild, and the ranch felt more like home than ever. After a quiet moment, Samuel said, I want you to know something. Mei Lin looked at him quietly, waiting. You don't owe me anything, he said. Not your time, not your help, not your company. I didn't help you because I expected something in return. I helped you because you deserved kindness. Mei Lin's heart warmed. I know, she said softly. That is why your kindness means so much. Samuel took a slow breath, choosing his next words carefully. But if you ever feel that this place could be more than a temporary stop, if you ever feel you could stay, not just for safety, but because this is where you want to be, he paused, not wanting to pressure her. I would be honored. The wind carried his gentle words across the porch. They settled warm and steady in Mei Lin's heart. I do want to stay, she said quietly. Samuel looked at her, surprised by her openness. You do, she nodded slowly. This place has given me peace. You have given me respect. And in this house, I feel like I can breathe again. Her voice softened. And I feel connected to you in a way I cannot explain easily. Samuel's heart moved in his chest, slow, warm, grateful. They sat side by side, watching the light fade into twilight. Their hands rested close on the railing, not touching yet, but close enough to feel the gentle warmth between them. After a quiet moment, Mei Lin spoke again, her voice gentle but sure. When I came here, I thought my journey had ended in disappointment. But now I think maybe it was guiding me somewhere better. Samuel turned to her with a soft smile. Maybe it was. Their eyes held a long, quiet moment, one filled with trust, warmth, and the beginnings of something deeper than either of them had expected. Just as the first stars began to show in the darkening sky, Mei Lin gently rested her hand on Samuel's. He looked down at their hands, then back at her face, and his quiet smile widened, warm and certain. Their hands remained together, steady and peaceful, no rush, no pressure. just two hearts choosing each other gently, naturally, and honestly. And in that simple moment, under the soft, growing light of an evening sky, Mei Lin felt something she hadn't felt since she left home. Belonging, not because she had been rescued. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she had finally chosen a place and a person with her full heart. A new life had begun, a kinder, warmer, truer one. And neither of them would ever forget how it started. With a quiet stranger on a train platform who saw her when she felt invisible, and with a brave woman who chose love not from need, but from understanding.